Okay, good afternoon. My name is Terry Waters, and I'm the chair of the Reparations Commission of Reparations, and I would like to welcome all of you here today. I'm actually serving in two capacities today. I'm the chairman and chairwoman of the Reparations Commission, but I'm also a member of Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church. So on behalf of Reverend Dr. Wallace Hartsfield and all of our members, we welcome you here at Metropolitan. We are celebrating our 128th year service to the community. And one of our sayings is we sit in the heart of the community and we have a heart for the community. So if you don't have a church home, and whether you do have a church home, we're always welcome to invite you at another time to come out and be with us. I am pleased to kick off the first listening section for the Reparations Commission on Reparations. We have an agenda, which you will see in just a moment. We have our subcommittee chairs on the stage, and the rest of our commissioners are in the audience, and they will all be introduced here in just a moment. At this time, I'm going to bring up Commissioner D.R.P., who will serve as your moderator for the day and take us through our workshop.
Thank you all so much. Again, I'm Commissioner Dion King Morris, and I am delighted to be here today. I have been given the honor of leading us through this listening session today. I wanted to welcome you, and I know that we just had an opportunity by our chairwoman to say welcome to the church, but I would love for you to look to somebody on your left and right and welcome them as well. So if you hadn't had a chance to say hello, how you doing, I'm going to take a moment to do that at this time. All right. Good. Now, we just start the conversation. We just say hello to this morning. So, we are excited about what is going to happen in this room today. First of all, thank you for being here. It is Saturday. It is, September. It is 1 o'clock, but you made your way here. So, we appreciate the time that you are investing in a very important topic. What we're going to listen and to communicate and talk about today is not new, right? It's a national effort that is causing national impact. And so we want to take this subject and bring it to our city, the city that we love, and to really speak and focus on the 5 points that we will discuss in detail a little bit later. So I wrote a few things down that I wanted to share with you so that we can just kind of understand what our purpose is today. So as we discuss and talk, we're going to talk about storytelling and sharing our journeys. Storytelling and sharing our journeys have been the basis for spreading knowledge, the basis for encouraging one another, and ensuring growth in our community. And the same holds true to this very day. I know how important it is to communicate and to be able to share your experience. In my profession as a mediator for conflict resolution for national organizations and also a DEI expert, I know how important it is not only to communicate, but in that communication that we need to listen. So that is our focus today. The commissioners that have been appointed by our mayor, Mayor Quentin Lucas, will be listening today and actively listening and leading them so that we can hear your stories, we can hear the experiences, we can understand the shared impact of our system barriers, and then there will be some stories that we hear today that will not only share their stories, but how they overcome it and being able to help our community. So this is a brand new commission and a brand new effort. We need you. This is our first time hosting this, and you are here. And so the expectation is that we will grow this effort hand in hand. And I do want to say this, we want to do well with our efforts. So we're depending on you. We want to serve our community well in this capacity, and do appreciate your support throughout this effort. So now I have the privilege of introducing Nikki Dean, who's going to talk to us about how we got here. How is it that all of this is in play? We represent a representative and director of this Kansas City Coalition of Reparations and advisor to our commissions. I'm sure there's many other titles that you hold, but if you would be so kind and put your hands together to welcome Ms.
Your greetings and hotel for everybody. I have a hotel for everybody. Hotel. This is ancient Connecticut. It's Egyptian greeting that means peace. I'm a founding member of the Kansas City Chapter of National Black United Front. Another one of our traditions is that before we speak, we always ask the elder for permission. I'm an elder myself, but I was told that I still needed to ask the elder for permission. So anyone here that's older than 71, I have permission to speak. Thank you. I was looking at them. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today. I said that I was a member of the National Black United Front, and our founding constitutions, one of our principal unity sites is that we support black reparations. Black reparations has been demanded for black people since prior to the Civil War and towards the long-term struggle. I would imagine that most of you here probably have not heard much about reparations. I was saying this was 10 years ago. Because it just wasn't a prominent subject. One of the people, a lot of us that we discussed in reparations, one of the most prominent things that happened was that in June of 2014, in the Atlantic magazine, the Times wrote an article on implementation of reparations. After that article came out, it really generated a lot of discussion in the country around reparations. You may recall that in the, I think it was 2016 presidential election, there were candidates in the Democratic primary that actually started talking about the need for black reparations. So it was something that was beginning to circulate. Of course, the major emphasis, which was emphasis to a lot of things, was the death of George Floyd. But that meant that a lot of people began to focus on some of the repression that had been happening in the community, and so this has been challenging. We formed the coalition, the Against Reparations Coalition, there were two tasks that we gave ourselves. One is to educate Kansas City on reparations. Because as I said, we knew that this wasn't a lot of valid information on reparations. We felt that was our task. The other task that we gave ourselves was to form a mayor's coalition. At that time, there was a lot of energy being put into trying to get HR 40, the federal legislation called reparations. But what we noticed was that there were a lot of local municipalities also began to look at what role the local government played in oppressing the black community. And so what we noticed is that there was a lot of cities that began local reparations efforts, and so we felt we could do the same. So we began to talk about these issues of reparations and hand out flyers. One of the things that happened was that I was handing out flyers at the 15th grade 2021, and Lucas was there. Yeah, I asked that Lucas, I said, we need support on reparations. He said, oh, we're not. Now, he hadn't said anything else about reparations. He said he was lying. I said, okay, what I found out was that there was a group called Metropolitan Mayors Organized Reparations Commission. And somebody from out of town called me and said, Mickey, you know if you're going to be able to sign on to this? And I said, no, I'm ready to sign. We didn't know. I looked at the website, and sure enough, Lucas' name was on there. So once we saw that, we called for a meeting with him because if he could put himself out, because this war group had made some pretty bold statements about what they were going to do in their cities. And so we met with him there to see what his plan was. And of course, when we met with him, we found out that he didn't have a plan. And so we decided to develop a plan for him. And so from that point on, we began to work on developing a local reparations initiative and trying to move up this commission. Now, one of the things that happened in the meantime is in April of 2021, we had City Council to naturally pass a resolution in support of our board. So that was a big help. But what we did was we continued to work on developing an ordinance for Mayor's Commission on Reparations. And we crafted that ordinance, we submitted it to the City Council, Councilman Robertson was the major government that, and we got the ordinance passed. And I think it's January this year when the commission was made. And I want to say that we really believe in the coalition. We have a very strong Mayor's Commission. There's some extremely good people on that commission. We support that commission. So going forward, the coalition will have two tasks. One, primarily, is to continue to educate people about reparations in Kansas City. And secondly, to provide whatever support we can to the Mayor's Commission that they ask for. So that's all of the story. Thank you very much.
you. At this time, we're going to have Task, the proper title, Fifth District City Council. His term ended in June 2023, but he was part of the City Council that unanimously approved the reparations ordinance, and we're going to have him come on and talk about that ordinance in the city's perspective. Any thoughts on that? And he's also a member of the Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church. So he got
Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse my tardiness. I'm just coming from a funeral, classmate of mine. But what Commissioner Barnes asked me to talk about was City Council's role in determining and creating the ordinance for reparations. As Mr. Dean explained, Mr. Robinson was the lead sponsor, and there were three others of us who were co-sponsors: myself, Councilman at the time, Brandon Ellington, and current Mayor Pro Tem, Brandon Park Shaw. And from what I understand, my conversations were with folks on the coalition, it took some 5 or 6 months to get all the language put together for the ordinance. And the ordinance gives specific examples of some harms and disparities that happen to Black people within Kansas City. And so the ordinance requires that the commission be established to study those harms in five different areas. I'm sure the coalition and the commission will talk about what those 5 areas are and give more detail about those areas. And coming back to the council with some recommendations of repairs. Now, doing the job of a city council person is often twofold. You create an ordinance, and the work of the ordinance is one thing. But on the other side of that, the work of getting it passed is another thing. And one of my jobs, I always felt, was if I'm supporting the ordinance, to make sure we had the correct number of votes to get it passed. And as Coalition Member Dean mentioned, the ordinance passed 10-1. I'd like to think that those of us who were supporters were able to talk about colleagues who were not sponsors in such a way that we were able to get them to understand that there's a need for us to do this study, for us to get some understanding of what the city's role in some of these disparities have been over the years, and how we as a city create some of the repair and in essence, create some reparations that will help ease some of those repairs. So I was proud to be a part of the historical, and I look forward to the work of the commission to come forward, and I'm going to do all I can as a citizen now, or a citizen, to help with in any way I can. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Councilman Barnes, and thank you so much, Mr. Dean, for all of that information and all of your support in leading us in this effort. I wanted to talk specifically, if we can go to the next slide, about the 5 harms that we are going to be focusing on, not only for this work that we're doing on this commission, but then also some of the pieces that people will be sharing stories later on the agenda. When you hear the word reparations, for me and probably for many of you that are here today, you think about money. How and what should we pay? But what we've expanded the focus on really is, again, 5 harm areas. Areas that have been impacted most, not just globally, but nationally. The first one is home ownership. Second one is economic development. definitely in healthcare equity, the education system, and of course criminal justice and public safety. And so those will be the 5 focuses that the mayor has commissioned us to focus in on. And before we go into our stories and our experience today, I'd like to make just to call the names of all those that serve on the commission. And when I call your name, you are here in the building, would you please be so kind and stand? And if you are joining us through Zoom, first of all, we want to say welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have any commissioners there, you can indicate in the chat box. That would be helpful as well. A lot of people are traveling, so we appreciate your presence virtually. First, you've already met our chair. She tells us what to do when we do it, and we're glad we do it because she has such a sweet spirit. Commissioner Chairwoman Terry Lawrence. What's that for? Commissioner Lynn Tommy. Commissioner Cornelius. And then I have Commissioner Dion King-Morris. Commissioner Madison Lyman. Commissioner Ryan Sorrell. And Commissioner Kenneth Ford. Commissioner Fritz Westmeyer. Commissioner Bridget Jones. Hopefully we have some people that are tapping in on the chat line. Commissioner Kelly Kern. Commissioner Will Bowles. Commissioner Dennis Hartsfield. And Commissioner Asia Morris, who could not be here today, but we also want to listen to her. So thank you all so much. These are the people that are dedicating their time, probably blood, sweat, and tears for the next few months to put together information policies to be able to propose to the mayor. I also want to just make, I don't know if you want to do this here, but I don't know. Okay. Mr. Ryan, we'd like to invite you to the stage at this time. Ryan is also leading one of our subcommittees. He will be putting extra work in leading a small group on the criminal justice piece here, but we would like to welcome you to the stage. The subcommittee needs, if you could just indicate over here, and we're beginning pointing out us, we've been doing our education, so we're focusing on the education system. Ryan Sorrell, that is mentioned, criminal justice. Bridget Jones will be part of the company. Asia Morris was not here. We're also focusing in on the corporate home ownership equity. And then Lynn Coffee will be economic development and business development. Right? So I'd like to set the stage for our next part, and I'm very, very excited about storytelling, providing our experiences, sharing our journey is what we are here to do. Sometimes it's hard for me in the role that I play in my professional piece as a mediator to just listen. But what I've learned in the number of years that I've been doing it is that by far is the most important part of any type of communication. So I'm going to ask the commissioners to just listen in, we're going to lean in, and we're going to actively listen to the stories that will be shared today, gleaning and taking in this information so that we can learn and be able to utilize that for our efforts on the commission. So the first person that we have for our next slide here, we'll go ahead and change it, is Gerald Morris. Gerald Morris is going to give us his story about some of the trials, some of the barriers that he faced in home ownership. Khalil, if you give us the next slide.
The only way that we as Black Americans could establish any kind of wealth, any type of stability, and saw family members strive to achieve the home ownership. So that's what I knew when I became an adult, that I had to do that in order for me to get myself established and comfortable knowing that that's one of the things that this American dream that we have, we need to be able to do, is to establish that for ourselves. So going into it, my personal journey with it was unique. I was fortunate enough to build 4 houses throughout my life, and each one of them has been a difficult situation. Personally, it's historically our journey as Black Americans. We've gone through a lot to be able to accomplish homeownership. It's not been easy, but for me, just having to go through the process, I had to do more each time to be able to accomplish it. And as a result, it's taught me a lot of lessons, and still been able to fight those lessons today.
So talk to us more about the present.
Well, like I say, this last home that we were able to try to accomplish. Well, first off, let me say this. I was able to, this last scenario, I became debt free, thinking that was going to make it easier. So I sold my home, paid off all my debt, and I had actually no debt at all going into this home process, this home ownership process, this last one. Because all the other times I always had to prove debt to income ratio, and prove income, and gainful employment, and all of the processes. So I'm like, okay, this time I'm going to approach it differently. And so I sold my home, I did well with it, paid off all my debt, and said, okay, we're going to go into this, and we're going to see if this works. So got there and went over to the north side, moved from all the way out south, moved over to the north side, and thought that I was going to get me a nice home in a nice neighborhood, and it was different.
So tell us the list of some of the things that made it different this time. My understanding it was like very recent that you and your wife were getting a new home.
Yeah. So it was. This was a couple of years ago. So we made a list of all the things that we went through. Now in mind, I told you I paid off my debt, so I didn't have any debt going into this. I was straight. Everything was good. Gainfully employed, got all the boxes checked. And I just want to read you what they actually told us that we needed to do to get this home. And a couple of them were just ridiculous. They told my wife that she needed to make a credit card purchase of $10 to establish an additional credit history. And then she did this. Okay, we're trying to do everything right. And when she did it, they came back and said, okay, now that was the wrong credit card. I'm like, are you serious? So then the next thing they did, we went into this process and they told us, well, we worked with a realtor, we wanted to be able to go through the home. And they wouldn't allow us to see the full home. And so now I'm getting a little upset. I went through this before. I'm saying, you mean to tell me that I can't go through the whole home and visit and do a full look through the home? What is this? I mean, what's going on here? Why come I can't look in every room in the home that I'm about to spend a significant amount of money on purchasing? So there was that totally different conversation. I don't want to get into everything else that we did about it, but that happened. And then they said lastly, now keep in mind I'm a veteran, okay, and so I've been able to utilize the veteran process, and I know how it works. And they actually came back and said, after all this, well, you need to make a substantial down payment in order to be able to accomplish this home. Said, no, I do not need to make a substantial down payment. And we're using this process. You can look at the regulations. We don't need to make a down payment. So they said, okay, yes, you do. I said, okay, we're gonna go a different direction. We'll do a different lender that way. And so then finally, we did this last one where I said, okay, look, we really want this home. I understand the process here. I want to go through this process. And what is the final price? They listed us the price, and I said, well, okay, we have some funds, we'll go ahead and pay more than the asking price just so that we can get into the home. We were denied still. That was our journey with this thing. This is that home. So having money, having employment, having all the T's crossed and the I's dotted in this America today, it still is difficult for us to accomplish that dream.
Wow.
So Gerald Morse just shared a story about having the credit, having great salary, being a veteran and serving in the Army, having all T's and all the I's dotted, and yet still a number of barriers that were put in place for him. I actually get to call him husband too, so I was part of this whole journey of some of the barriers that we experienced and our ownership that we wanted to share with you. And the reason I feel that is important because many times we will believe that those barriers come to people that are not resourced, right? What happens when you are resourced and you put money aside and you're willing to pay over the asking price, and yet it's still because of the color of our skin we are denying home ownership. So that's one of the stories. Next we will have Lamont McIntyre, and I'm going to have him to introduce himself, and then he's also going to share a story today. He is on a speaking circuit, and so he will have to leave as soon as he finishes. But I would like for you to welcome him by putting your hands together today.
I appreciate God being here. My name is Mom McIntyre. When I was 17, I was arrested and convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to prison where I spent 2 years. I came home 6 years ago when I was 41, and a co-founder of mine, Herbert, is a guy. We started here because he did 24 years wrong, got it 2 years wrong. Together we formed this organization where we help innocent women get out of prison. We started that 2018. Since then, we managed to get 4 people out of prison. And once we get them home, we get them with comprehensive care to help them get established, get acclimated to a world they're not familiar with. And I also have a barber college, Airline Barber Academy, where we have 40 students now. We got young people finding career paths. We got young people get their minds together, the business, economic stuff together, and we just try to be a part of the community we once was not so good to. So that's why I'm here. The community really dedicated to me because when I was in prison, it was a community of people who was fighting for our freedom. So when I see crowds like this, I would get emotional because you see how small the group is. So it's not a lot of people who care about the issues just surrounding you, but to see a group of people here like this, always moving because I know how important this room is. So I'm here for that. I do have to run out, but I'm a part of my community every way. My entire reaching any kind of way I'm part of the area. This is right and whatever is good, and I'm supportive of everything that's progressive and going forward. So if you want to reach out to me any kind of way you can reach out to me, I'm happy to be a part of whatever you got going on is good. So y'all be patient about this for having me. I have to go. I thank y'all.
Lamont, we appreciate you sharing your story. I'm sure that you've probably seen this journey on TV. We have a special story that we were neighbors. Ms. Rosie and my grandma lived across the street from each other and actually lived at the same age. And so it was nothing for me to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need, and Lamont said I'm there. And so we just really appreciate it. So as you think you're going to this next event, would you also put your hands together and we really appreciate it. Just to have more time to for our next listening session. Appreciate it. So for our next listening piece, we're going to have Claude Harris. One of the areas that is part of our 5 harms is the education system, and many of the impediments and the barriers that we experience in that. So we've asked Claude to come and speak briefly on what are some of those impediments, his personal story, but then also how he has been able to change some of what he's gone through to positively impact other people, other students that want to do the same thing, you know, to help send Black and brown children to school across this nation. So will you please welcome Claude Harris?
Hey, thank you guys for the opportunity. My quick story, my name is Claude Harris. I'm the CEO and founder of a company, it's an education technology company called College Coaching Network. College Coaching Network was actually birthed by my own personal life. In high school, I was a pretty nerdy student. I had a 3.875 GPA, but I only scored a 17 on the ACT test score. And the reason why I didn't do that well on the ACT is because my student counselor there explained to me the importance of having a good ACT test score. I don't know if you guys know this, but the average amount of time that a guidance counselor will spend with a student is 38 minutes. And that's over their entire 4 years of high school. And so I'm a mama's boy by nature. And I would have done everything in my power to make sure that I had high scores so I wouldn't put a financial burden on my mom. So when we got ready to go down to college and to apply, we found out that we were very, very short. My mom almost completed her 401k just to pay for 1 year of my college expenses. She had no clue how we were going to pay for my sophomore, junior, or senior year. But I do remember going up to church, and I told my mom, keep the faith, somehow, some way, we'll figure it out. And I was fortunate enough to walk on the basketball team. I was a pretty good athlete, and I was able to become a person in my family that graduated from college, went on to become the vice president at Commerce Bank in the wealth division. And I found out very quickly that the test, in some situations, is culturally biased. And so some statistics I'm just going to share with you real quick. There's $1.8 trillion of student loan debts that families in America have today. In 2010, legislation called the Health Care Reform Act of 2010 basically was put into act, and it allowed the United States government to become the largest holder of U.S. student loans. They actually right now hold over 92% of all the student loans that are out in the world today. And so when we saw what President Biden was up to, which I believe commended what he was trying to do, but I don't know if you guys know this, but 43% of our GDP, that's income that the country brings in, is comprised of future dollars coming from student loan debt. 43% of our GDP is coming from student loan debt. And that burden is being put on the students that have aspirations of doing something positive with their life. How can we educate and create a change for systemic poverty in education? Well, one of the things we can do is we can actually help kids get more counseling. And so what we want to do through our company that we created is provide 24/7 college and career counseling. So I've been doing this for over a decade. There's 3 quick ways that I'll share with you that we all can come together to eradicate systemic poverty in education. Number 1, we can actually help our students obtain an associate's degree when they're in high school. As a parent, you don't have to wait for, or grandparent, you don't have to wait for high school to help your child get into college. You can advocate for yourself. You can reach out to your local community college and ask, do they offer college-bound classes? They're called dual credit classes. With a 2.5 GPA, you can actually self-enroll your student into college-bound classes, and they can graduate from high school with a high school diploma, and guess what? Also an associate's degree. That will take 50% of the college costs off the table. Number 2 is we can help our students discover their purpose. A lot of times we make a lot of statements about the things that we see going on in the world, but oftentimes, like me, sometimes your purpose is discovered because life happened to you, and we learn to take that and reverse it and become a solution to the problems that we encounter ourselves. We can help our kids to discover their purpose. And number 3, we can actually look at partnering with organizations that already have solutions that are in place. I've been working in this capacity for 10 years. We use virtual reality in the metaverse to allow students to get more engaged, to find scholarship opportunities that can make them a better person and put them in a position that can actually create wealth. The education system, lastly, does not teach our young people how to create wealth. So when they graduate from college and they have thousands of dollars of student loan debts, they are not in a position to pay to buy their first home because they're paying student loans back. Some people are in a position where they can't get their dream job because the entry-level position that they have a degree in doesn't pay enough money for them to pay back the student loans and pursue that actual degree. And lastly, for those grandparents that are out there, you can't get grandchildren as fast as you want because they can't start families because they're still trying to pay back student loan debt. So we all need to play our part in eradicating systemic poverty in education.
Thank you so much, Paul. So you can see that there are some efforts that are being made toward this, and certainly there is more work that can be done. So I'm grateful for you sharing just a few of the things that you know can really kind of help out and resolving areas that we have in the education system and financial system for our next generation's education. Next, we'll have Grace Gaston Simmons provide a video on her testimony just about the inequity in healthcare. And so, Khalil, if you could run that for us right quick with healthcare with Grace Jasmine Simmons.
Hi, my name is Grace Yasmin Simmons. I am grateful to have this opportunity to share with you all a little bit about my story and my experience with the healthcare system. Being a person who works in healthcare, but sharing today from the experience of my lived experience within healthcare. As a self-employed citizen, I think when it comes to how I experience healthcare as a self-employed citizen, it reminds me very much of how I experience healthcare as a Medicaid and as an uninsured recipient. For those of you that don't know, when you are self-employed, one of the ways to get insurance is to enter into the marketplace. And you come into the marketplace as an individual, you pay for health insurance premiums of up to $1,200 a month. However, the coverage is much more limited. Where you can go is much more limited. I'll give you an example of a recent experience. My son had concerns with his heart. And so when you have a child that is sick, the first place that you think of taking them is Children's Mercy. But I've come to find out that Children's Mercy was not within network for my provider. And so then I had to make a decision. Do I pay 100% for this service, or do I not take my child where I know they can get the best health care? And before I could make the decision, I was actually reached out to be informed that my insurance didn't work there and maybe I wanted to cancel my appointment, which I didn't do. I went into this appointment not knowing what the bill would be, what I would have to cost, all of those fears. But the alternative was to not know. And so that was a challenge for me. Do I give my child the opportunity to get the best access, the best care available, or while not knowing what that was going to cost, what it would be, or do I not give him the best, give him the opportunity to have the best care? And so I chose to go where I knew he could get the best care and deal with what I would pay on the back end. And so for me, that was a very tough decision and an unfortunate decision that I had to make, but one that I had to make. But that's an experience with having that self-employed coverage versus coverage that I would receive if I was getting that coverage through an employer. High premiums, that just comes with the price tag of being self-employed. You are going to have high premiums, which is that monthly payment that you make every month in order to have health care insurance. And in fact, for years, I lived unemployed and uninsured because of the premiums that I would have to pay in order to have that coverage. And so that was definitely a challenge in making the decision to continue to be self-employed or go out and get your traditional position, which would cover, which would provide benefits, but would also leave my children for hours alone and not having that supervision, which would come at a cost as well. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But that has been some of my experience being uninsured. What bias is how I experience in the healthcare system based off of my race. Definitely I have experienced the assumption that I couldn't pay, even when it came to making that decision about whether or not to take my child to Children's Mercy. The assumption was made that I would choose not to go there versus choosing to go there and pay whatever had to be paid. That assumption was already made for me before I made the decision, and then I had to go back and counteract that and say, I know this is what you thought I might not do, or what I might do, but actually I do want to receive the service and I will pay whatever needs to be paid. That assumption was made before me. I had another recent experience where I went to the dentist And for whatever reason, I provided my health care, my card for coverage, and they didn't scan it in. And so when they reached out to me, they automatically said to me, do you need help getting enrolled in Medicaid? They never even asked me if I had insurance or if I had a card that I needed to be provided. They immediately asked me if I needed help getting enrolled in Medicaid. And I asked about that. I said, no, I'm just curious as to how you decide who you're going to ask about insurance and who you will automatically direct to Medicaid. And I never received a response upon that. You know, the challenge when you work within healthcare, you know what options are available. And so it's interesting to go and receive care and not be offered certain things. And then to ask that question, I'm curious, how come you didn't offer this to me? I'm curious why you didn't direct me, because they didn't assume that I would even know about that other option. And so then when I do, there's always that stumbling and that uncomfortable feeling of someone what feels like trying to dig themselves out of the hole, and maybe have to ask themselves, why didn't I ask? Why didn't I ask? And those are things that I experience on a routine basis, and it's unfortunate. In my opinion, what would make access and affordability to quality care better? You know, I think that one of the things about when you give access to care, not making the assumption that the change in quality should change. When you go to when you go to one clinic, if it's not expected for you to wait 2 hours to be seen by a provider, then it shouldn't be expected for that at any other clinic. So I think that just having a mindset that the expectation, regardless of what somebody paid, should be the same across the board. As a clinician, I try to hold myself to that same standard. I know in certain communities, the waiting room is full, and that's a norm. Waiting 2 or 3 hours to see a provider is a norm. In my mind, that should not be a norm anywhere. If it's not a norm in this neighborhood, it shouldn't be a norm in this neighborhood. So I think having access to quality of care starts with that, just that mindset of what is good care, what does that look like, and then how do we make sure that everybody is getting that same care. How can reparations repair harms to the Black citizens in regards to health care? I think reparations sends the message that we understand. It validates the harm that has been done, and in validating that harm, that's the first place of building healing. It builds it because if I understand that you understand my pain, then maybe I can trust you. There's so much mistrust within the healthcare system, and to some degree, understandably so, that reparations is a first step at bridging that gap to say, we understand and you can trust us. And I think until we bridge that gap there, then there's always that disconnect between the people who need the service and the people who are providing the service. There is still such a big gap in that understanding, and that can be very, very frustrating to those people who are needing to receive that care. I hope that this has been beneficial. I look forward to seeing these changes in healthcare occur. I think beginning to have these conversations is the first step, and I think there's definitely value in having someone from the inside, meaning within healthcare, also experiencing healthcare, to really be able to see where are these breakdowns happening and how can we make things better is a crucial step. And so I'm just excited to see the work that you're doing and look forward to seeing continued improvement within the healthcare system. Thank you.
So there's a significant amount of work that we still have to do. There are a number of things that I pulled from Ms. Simmons' stories today. One, just again, the lack of access in certain communities, particularly in our community, Cashmere areas, the mistrust that is still there, and then just the quality of care. So that is something again that our commission will be and we're studying in how we can prepare these reparations in those systems. And last but not least is a force to be reckoned with. Dan Smith is going to be talking today about economic development. He does a lot of work in our community with small businesses and has just grown in this community. So I'll let him share more about the work that he's done, but then also share his personal journey and his personal story. So will you welcome to the stage, Dan Smith.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to come talk. You say, you put pressure on us when you say forced to be reckoned. I don't know. I don't know if that's me or yeah, my name is Dan Smith. I'm a co-founder of an organization called the Porterhouse KC. Organization was created to help support entrepreneurs in the urban core. I heard Ms. Simmons talk about bridging the gaps. That was the intention, that was our whole intention when we first started our organization about 7 years ago. So, Brother Lyman, see you back there. Thank you. We want to be a bridge because we understand there are so many missing pieces as it relates to, and I've been using the term, the social determinants of health. Our communities don't live as long as we should because of the lack of social determinants of health, right? Healthcare, economic development, viability, community support, funds, money, right? Like we have so many, so far. So we'll talk a little bit about the reason why we started and kind of where we are today. 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago, about 10 years ago, Google Fiber made this huge announcement. And they were coming to Kansas City, right? It was a big announcement. We loved it. It was a phenomenal thing for us. And all these small businesses thought that, this was going to change the way that Kansas City business was done, right? We wanted to be the most entrepreneurial city in the country. We saw a lot of movement on the west side of the city, but we didn't see as much on the east side. We wanted to figure out why. So we went down this rabbit hole trying to figure out what we could do to help support innovators, creators, folks that are just trying to get by, try to figure life out for themselves through entrepreneurship. We started with education. So we started with some speaker series events. So we invited some consummate professionals to come speak, workshops, style stuff. It was free. We provided food, all this good stuff out of our pocket. And it's kind of grown from there. And this last year, we were able to give out close to $200,000 in small business grants to small businesses all in the urban core. We've hosted various cohorts. We have a 15-week small business development program that we provide education, small business education. Because we know a lot of people are really great at that craft, but not necessarily great at running a business, right? And so we created a classroom structure for folks to learn. We also created a mentoring program because we know some folks do have the education, but they just don't have the mentoring to help them get through to the next phase or levels of their business that they want to get to. So we created a mentoring program. And now we're building space on 31st to help folks that are focused in the retail space, right? We have a lot of retail-based entrepreneurs that are in our program, but a lot of them don't really get a chance to see if what they do is actually sustainable. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of folks that do pop-ups, pop-up events, and fairs and things of that nature, but you really can't see if what it is that you're doing could potentially be a full-time endeavor, right? So we want to create a safe space where folks can come and fail often, mess up, not lose their shirts, right? Because we fail a lot in entrepreneurship. We fail more than we succeed, right? And so knowing that, we have to have safe spaces for folks to fail. So that's what we're creating. So our goal is to create, if we see problem areas, we try to solve the problems with what we feel like could potentially be the solution. So really excited about the work that we've been able to do. We're a confident funded organization. We've been funded by JP Chase, Unity Bank, a lot of others. There's a word that comes to mind when I think about you all and the folks on this commission. And the word that comes to mind is belief. Sounds simple, right? Belief is a simple word. But it's so powerful, right? You all are in this space right now because of a belief, right? Saturday afternoon, weather's great out here. Probably be doing other things, probably be upset about the Chiefs game a little more, right? We can follow a little bit, but instead of doing that, we decided to be here today. I'm excited just to be here to talk and to listen. But I believe whatever we find to be true and the direction that we end up taking will happen because of the people that are sitting right here and obviously the people that are working on the project. So, again, thank you for letting me come, have some dialogue, tell you a little bit about the Courthouse KC. I grew up on 33rd Jackson. My mom still lives on 33rd Jackson. I'm a boy from the east side. And I've gotten to where I've gotten to this far because of that word, belief, right? And we've got a long way to go, but we also have to recognize where we've come from. So, just want to put that out there. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I hope that you all enjoyed all of those testimonies. We're going to take just a minute to transition because we're going to open the floor to the audience so that we can hear your stories. And I just wanted to bring clarity. We're not just here to listen to stories. This is our first time out in the community. And so if you have questions, concerns, we want to hear those as well. This is just not about the stories. We want to make sure that we get this right. We want to make sure that the community partners with us to get this right. You're very, very early in the process. We have not hired our research team yet. If there's a recommendation you have, things that you'd like us to consider, this is your time as well. So we just want to hear what you have to say. So just give us a minute to transition. And I'm going to ask, too, if any of the subcommittee leads, the folks that you see on the stage are subcommittee leaders. These folks have expertise in the particular areas that they're representing. And after those presentations, I just want to give them an opportunity. If you have comments, responses, or anything that you'd like to share, I can pass the mic if you'd like to make an opening comment.
I didn't have anything specific I was going to say, but I think this is just a very historic moment for our city. I feel honored to be on here. I think that there's just a lot of opportunity and potential for us moving ahead on helping lead the Public Safety Committee, or what we are proposing to change the name from Criminal Justice to Public Safety, because of course we don't think our criminal punishment system has ever employed justice for Black people in Kansas City or the larger United States, and so we're proposing to change it to Public Safety. But yeah, we have a lot that we want to accomplish with the commission, and I'm just very excited to be on here with you all and to hear what everybody in the community has to say as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a lot of additional comments. Just really happy to be here and part of the commission. Also happy to hear from the community today and to learn about your experiences, and also what we think the commission should specifically focus on. So I'm a physician here in Kansas City. I've lived and practiced here for over 18 years. And the main reason I'm here today is because of what I've learned from the patients and the families that I see. So I take care of kids with asthma. Asthma is the most common chronic condition in childhood. And it's the one where we see some of the deepest disparities specifically for Black children. I also do research, and so we know a lot about asthma. We have a lot of great technologies. But what you see when you look at the disparity curves is despite all of the funding that's going into new medications, new interventions, those disparities still aren't closing. So that tells us that it's the environment, it's the social determinants of health that our kids are living in, our community is living in. It's not due to individual choices, it's due to the lack of opportunity that our community has to be healthy. And so that's one of my focuses in this work is making sure that there are equitable opportunities and clearly justice, not just equity, but justice, repairing the harms that have led to the healthcare disparities that we see. So your stories and your opinions are greatly important in that and directing us into the right directions.
Thank you all for being here today and taking some time. As you all have heard several times, it's a beautiful day. You can do lots of other things. Currently, I'm moving for the Colorado Buffaloes. Another day. That's the spirit. I'm Cornell. I've been in education for about 12 years now. Currently, the founder and executive director of an educational support organization that works on the representation of educators, retaining and sustaining Black and education specifically. No matter where we go, education is the foundation of, I don't want to downplay the other subject areas, but education is the foundation of all of these things, right? In the way that we are preparing our babies from 0 to 4, when they're entering kindergarten, whether they are reading or not by 3rd grade, whether or not they're graduating from high school, or they're going on to have high quality of life. So it's important that we take some time to dig in around how education is not working. Because let's be very clear, it's not just not working for Black children, it's not working for any children right now. And so I feel honored, blessed to be a part of the opportunity to do more research, more thinking, to make some recommendations for the way that we can prepare education for all of our kids. All of our babies are all our babies.
Good afternoon. I'm Lou Talkie. I'm the chair of the Economics Subcommittee. And first of all, the stories we heard today I would put them in the category of success stories. They are men and women who have overcome the difficulties that go along with them being who they are. But those success stories should be unnecessary. They should not have had those barriers. And those barriers are there because of who they are. And who they are, how they are categorized is a part of who they are in this country. I would say the world, but we're limited to this country, and certainly in the city. So, first of all, let me commend them for having the perseverance to be successful and bound to help others to be successful. I am a associate professor of economics at the University of Kansas City. I teach economics, but I'm not the type of economist that you normally think about when you think about economics. I teach a very different kind of economics with a staggered approach. And so when I think about economic development, that's the title of this committee. It should be understood that economic development is the other side of the coin. Development is the other side of the coin for underdevelopment. The
development occurs in one place, underdevelopment occurs somewhere else. Okay? And so we're talking about particular disparities in the 5 harm areas, but we can expand those to other harm areas. Understand that those harms create a benefit for someone else. And understand that it's not necessarily a benefit shared by persons in this room. We have a discussion going on nationally about disparities in wealth and income. And some have benefited at the expense of others. And some have benefited more than others have some have been harmed more than others have benefited. And so when I teach economic development, but the economic development I teach is not limited to business and real estate development. Economic development in general is the ability of people to provide food, clothing, and shelter for themselves and their families. And economics is not just about money, although that might be the first thing that people, it is the first thing that people think about, that economics is about money. But in this context of reparations, economics is about harms. And the harms are more than money. Money is not the only thing necessary to repair the harms. But on the other hand, local communities, since we're talking about local reparations, local communities have a limited supply of money. And so the repair of harms have to be found elsewhere, not just in money, not ignoring money, but elsewhere. And one of the things to remember in terms to understand in terms of the mission of this commission is that city policy, action and policy has had widespread effects that have been beneficial for some and harmful for others. And so it's not just that the city has been involved in policies that have created money for some and poverty for others. It's the effects of well beyond money. Economics is not just about market activity, buying and selling things. Human beings have been involved in economies, providing food, clothing, and shelter for themselves before there was even this idea of money. And so when we talk about economics, don't just think about money. It's much, much more than that. In fact, economics has a connection to everything. When I was talking about the connection of education to everything. Well, everything is connected to everything. And so, for example, in housing, most people's wealth is in their housing. And if there's been disparities in ability for people to obtain housing, that means there's been disparities in people's ability to obtain wealth. And wealth is a cumulative thing. You have some, it compounds, it grows. The rate of growth, if you have little, is much less than the rate of growth if you have. Criminal justice is also, of course, connected to economics in many ways. But here's an example. The 13th Amendment still allows to enslave those persons who are convicted of a crime. And those persons go into the prison system and they create products that are sold. They're not paid very much for that. In fact, they're paid slave wages for that. Those products come out into the regular economy and they're sold at regular prices. And so those who are benefiting from this criminal justice, the criminal injustice system, are making extra profit, not just ordinary profit, but extra profit. Of course, health and education, those two things, even in standard economics, are considered part of what we call human capital. If a person is unhealthy, they cannot work. And if a person is uneducated, they cannot create enough income to provide food, clothing, and shelter for their families. And it's even worse if some person's education is valued and not paid the value of their labor. There's an idea in standard economics that people are paid what they're worth. That's nonsense. Oh, let me say this. There's a book that I recommend for you. It's a book by a colleague of mine, an economist named Richard America. It should be an easy name to remember. He wrote a book in 1999 called The Wealth of Nations, and he coined the term unjust enrichment. that becomes the foundation for reparations.
Thank you, our subcommittee chairs. So at this time, we'd like to open the floor to the audience. We have a microphone just over here. Eric, who has been providing us support, will help get that microphone to you. And before I ask the question, I want to recognize Commissioner Madison Lyman. I hope that she was here when we started. She's our student commissioner. She's here at Lincoln High School. Do we have any comments, questions to our listening? Would you please state your name and if you can keep your comments to 3 to 5 minutes, we would appreciate it.
Okay, yes, my name is Ophelia Williams. I'm here with Morris Square. I want to let everybody know we had a march from Kansas City, Kansas to Kansas City, Missouri, September the 30th, and it's for criminal justice. And Kansas City, Kansas, I have a setup identical to employees that got arrested at the age of 14 for a crime they didn't do. And they just turned 39 September the 4th, and they still in prison. 25, one got 25, and the other one got 50 at the age of 14. Okay, a couple of days after they came and arrested my boys and took them out the house, a detective by the name of Roger Goosey came, knocked at my door. I let him in. He came in and raped me while my sons are in his jail, you know. So, yes, I'm down for criminal justice. And I know for the police to get taken care of with the courts, that I need everybody's prayers. And, excuse me, and I need my sons to come home. They've been gone too long, you know.
Can I ask someone to issue a give her some assistance? Ms. Williams, we really appreciate your testimony, and our heart goes out to you and your family. I think I'm familiar with your story, having heard it in the news. And although your story sounds like a Kansas City, Kansas story, we know that those stories are happening all over our community on both sides of the line. And we appreciate your transparency. And those are the stories that we need to hear about, because our investigative team will help dig into those stories to try to find out who's responsible, how did it happen, and hopefully that will help us create repertory recommendations to our city so that things like that never happen again. Thank you. You have a young man in a red shirt up front. Please state your name.
I don't need. I can hear my voice echoing off the wheel.
I think you need your mic. I think you need the microphone to go behind you. Go here.
And on Zoom. My name's Sterling. Play out.
You need the microphone, sir.
My name's Sterling Playhigh.
Charlie, you say your last name?
Playhigh.
Leah.
And my story is exactly the same as what you guys are talking about. I grew up in the wealthy side of Kansas City.
in grade 10. But the minute I was born with a traumatic head injury. And some of you guys up here are doctors, and I have a doctor here sitting with me. So you know what that means. And you know that the research has now concluded that when somebody is born with that head injury, the chances of mental illness are really high as they get older. And so, just like the ones we are talking about helping, I am one. Carbon copies. The only difference is my skin is white, theirs is black. And I tore it up back in my life. I tore my life all to shreds. Until 2005. As a matter of fact, it was March 11th. When a rich white guy came to me and invited me into his world. His world is this building. He was the pastor of a Baptist church. And he did the hard work that you guys are beginning. The amount of time and effort and energy that guy poured into me. He was the senior pastor of a church. He was a husband and a father of 2 teenage daughters. And as we started developing our relationship and he started seeing growth as me with Christ, things would fall apart. Old habits would show up. He left his wife, his kids, the church didn't exist when those times came. Because he knew where he had to be. Right alongside me, coming to look and see where I'm at and how bad I'm in the ditch at that moment. I want to commend this church for hosting this today. But I also want to challenge this church. You guys are doing a lot of great work and asking all the right questions. But the answers are right in this building. Churches, everybody who calls themselves Christians, it is our responsibility, our job, to put an end to this nonsense. What can Christ's community do? You're doing it right now. You're a doctor. You barely get time off. You are doing what Steve did with me for 4 years. You got a bunch of kids, 4 kids. You think you would rather be here or at home with the 4 good dogs? I know they're good kids. You want to get the people outside to put the guns down, put the drugs down, and quit the nasties? Do your job.
Mr. Charlie, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for that. Any other questions? We have one in the center back. And then I'll please announce yourself, your name, please.
Sure. My name is Philip Bride. It's interesting how over our lives we come up with different ideas, especially political ideas. I think a lot of it comes from our life experiences. I think my views on the start of my mother. She's born in 1927. You guys have 5 hours. So think about the sexism that she kind of grew up with. Right before the Great Depression, 1905. So her dad couldn't handle, get no money. So she goes up with an orphanage. There is 0 generational wealth when she's on her own at 16. So fast forward, all 5 of those girls went on to college. And a few of the things that she taught me that I have not heard discussed, especially, and I so appreciate especially the comments about the educational, the issues that we have transcend skin color. And I want this committee to be successful. But the Pew Research Center put out their analysis on opinions. 80% of whites are opposed to reparations based on skin color. Hispanics, 58 opposed. Asians, 65% opposed. No, we got it. So my concern is not so much reparations for any form of inequities, but my concern in the city is locally funded reparations based on skin color. And I'll tell you why. The most recent census data we have for the city is that our city is dying relative to the metro area. We go back, I grew up, first 7 years of my life, 54, in Michigan. Quite frankly, black issues have always played a part in my life. Great person to look up, Dr. Tom Webster. I don't know if any of you older people recognize that name. I think he was involved in the Urban League. My dad used to take him to Allen College where he taught. So, just because of him. Anyway, so these issues have always meant a lot to me. And I want to see your communities successful. But again, with the ability of people, quite frankly, not to move in to Kansas City, Missouri, and go to the suburbs, we're going to see that trend get worse if this committee recommends locally funded reparations based on skin color. Okay? So there's a big difference between locally funded reparations and reparations in general. And also, a lot of the issues that you talked about, the asthma, it's like, well, if asthma is a problem, let's address that for all the kids who are failing. You mentioned our education system is broken. And I agree with you. But you said it was broken for all the kids. All right? So I just think if the committee continues to focus on skin color and it's local, it's not going to be successful. I do want you to see successful, so I hope we can change gears here. As far as education, I wrote up 35 points of an agenda that I'd love to see introduced to 4th graders, especially about at-risk loans and industry. And
Sir, I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Okay. And I called the mayor, and I said, I talked to you about it. He's like, you're right. But things was, people need to be taught that you need to do 3 things before you bring children into this world. You have to get an education or learn a trade. You have to start your career and then get married, and then you have your children. 70% of the black children born in the United States are born into single parenthood.
Thank you so much for your comment. Can you tell me your name, please?
Sure. Philip Bride, B-R-Y.
Philip Bride. Thank you so much, sir. We had a question on this side. A gentleman in the striped white, blue, and orange Sure.
I have been enlightened by some of the testimonies that people have been giving. Well, my name is Alvin Dixon. I'm pastor of Second Baptist Church in Richmond, Missouri. But I go through so many meetings and so forth. And I just want to know what is the purpose of your agenda and what's your goals and how far you have come this far, number one. And number two, I truly believe in education, but I only heard one thing about a trade that our children need to inquire. There are some trades out there that pay more than a college degree. I know I have a college degree, I don't mean nothing, but the trade pays more. So some of I just want to know what goals that you wish to achieve, because you can often, I know of all the testimonies that I've heard, you can often go different avenues and won't come up with any achievement thus far. So will you please enlighten me on that so I can know where I'm going before I get there?
Yeah, so very simply, the goals of the commission are to take a really deep look at all of the areas that we've talked about. So we talked about, the gentleman talked about a lot of these issues impact all people, and that's true, but they disproportionately impact Black people. If you look at health, housing, criminal justice, all of the areas, we are disproportionately affected. And I don't know what you're saying, I'm living behind your disability, but I think that Black folks are the only ones enslaved in the United States. So that's a very unique experience. And after slavery, then we had Jim Crow, then we had all types of other things that made it very difficult for us to live a regular existence. And so we have a unique experience in the United States. And that's one of the reasons that we are looking at reparations in Kansas City, to take a look at those 5 farm areas in Kansas City and identify who did it, how did they do it, who's responsible for it, and do the city have policies and practices in place that allow those things to continue. At the end of our task, we should have our first report in 12 months and a final report in 18 months. And our goal at the end of that 18 months is to make recommendations back to the mayor and the city council as to what we can do as a city to repair the damage that has been made in those 5 areas, and what kinds of things can we put in place to where those things never happen. I would encourage all of you, if you haven't seen it, the ordinance which outlines, it's a 5-page ordinance that the mayor's team wrote that outlines a variety of different things that we'll take a look at. You can also go to our website. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Barbara Haynes Jenkins. I have a company called Artline Agency. If skin color was not a factor, this would be a beautiful world. However, it is. I have walked that kind of path. So your walk is going to be completely different than mine. I have dealt with a number of corporations who will not give any funding. They will give you the runaround. Let me give you an example. Many Blacks drive Mercedes. When you get a Mercedes magazine, have you seen a Black woman on there? No. I confronted them. They gave me backlash. I'm a one-man band. So when I go to these corporations, it's just me. It's going to be my word against their word. Their attitude is different. How many of you, and I don't mean when I say white members in this audience, raise your hand if you purchase from a Black-owned business once a month? Raise your hand. Black people do that almost every day. See, you're different. Don't go by just you. I grew up in a mixed neighborhood with Blacks and whites over on 36th Street. White girls were my friends, they went to church with me and everything. But the difference is now, I raised my children after their father died. by myself, single. And black people have to struggle more so, believe it or not, than any of you out here. We struggle daily. My faith kept me going. That was it. There were a lot of times I went to businesses, and it wasn't because I wasn't professional. I was professional. But you know what I had to learn? I had to walk in there on them because if they heard me on the phone, they did not sit on the phone because of my race. So I had to show up in person to let them know, oh, she's okay. But even then, if my work wasn't something they thought was like what they do, so you can't be yourself. You have to be emulating them before you got money. So yeah, reparations is in need. I would be the first to say that. Because for all the things that have happened to us in the past that you cannot even imagine. You can't even imagine. I say it again, you can't even imagine the stuff we have gone. I lost my sister in 9/11. When I think about how they sectioned out the money, if this gentleman up here on stage said you are paid according to your work, I don't remember exactly. That's what they did. How do you pay people according to their work when everybody's life is valued? Everybody. God didn't say you work 3 million, you work 1 million. God didn't say that. So I could talk all day, but I'm just going to sit down. But reparations is needed.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Good afternoon. Wyatt Scruggs Jr., my name.
Wyatt Scruggs.
Jr.
Thank you.
Grandson of a documented slave. And as this man is talking back here about his struggle, but he's still white. We as black people must realize one thing. We are behind the 8 ball all our lives just because of this melanated skin thing. They got an act called the Crown Act. Can you imagine? This going out my head, they have to have an act for me to have this go out my head so I can get a job, maybe. Maybe it ain't right, like them young men got them beautiful locks. You might hold them back and get a job. And when I heard them say 85% of white folks don't believe, a demand reparation, they need to go get a Bible, the greatest black history book in the world, go to a library, and sit down in the black history part of that library and start reading. We were chattel was French for a cow. We as black people need to put our mask on. Save yourself. Because if you don't, you're going to die. Preparation, reparation, separation, liberation. We must prepare for it. We must demand it. And then we get it, we must separate. We don't have to make an exodus. Because that 85% is going to leave. 85%. It's crazy. But anyway, I just wanted to let y'all know that because here's what I believe in. We as black people, it's going to happen. Everywhere I go, I've been talking about reparations 50 years of my life. 50 years since my father passed. And he told the story about when he was sharecropper and his grandfather, my grandfather, put his finger in a white man's face and told him, because he was cheating on his crop, he said, you may not pay me, but you're going to forever owe me and mine. Time is up. Payday coming. You got to get paid, bro. That's it.
Marvin Ryan, lifelong Kansas City resident, entrepreneur, owner of Equitable Development Partners, LLC, Attainable Home Builders.
And last and today.
Proud dad. Absolutely. The difference between your parents, your mother, in her situation, she was orphaned because her father couldn't provide for her. The difference in our situation is we were enslaved because we are who we are. Your mother was not disadvantaged because she was white. We were and are disadvantaged in this country because we are black. That is a very prescriptive injustice. So to somehow think that we have to have a non-prescriptive resolution is absolutely stupid, right? So Kansas City, Why is it important for the local government to address this issue? The father of restrictive covenants, the organization co-founded by the father of restrictive covenants, ULI, enacted that practice all across the country, starting here in Kansas City. There are certain parts of the city, of the metro, that we still don't live in, and there's still restrictive covenants in place in Roland Park and other parts of the city. Want more education, which you say you value education? Take the dividing line tool. It's free, and it's Googleable. If you want history, if you want research, Sean Rochester, author of The Black Tents, he discovered that there's a general rule. It's the 2% rule. So when you look at over 50 years of supplier diversity initiatives, there are less than 2% of African American companies that actually receive the purchasing from corporate America after 50 years. Because why? They have diverse supplier diversity initiatives, but it's non-prescriptive. It does not target African American businesses, right? So to think we're going to get there with a general plan, rather than a specific plan, I didn't want the doctor treating me with a general treatment when I got bronchitis. I need you to treat my bronchitis now, not something else, right? If you're still afraid of, if you still like more research inside of Pew, check out McKinsey. McKinsey talks about this 50 years of supply diversity with no real net change for Black-owned businesses. So the information is out there. The city of Kansas City, with over $2 billion in deposits in local banks and national banks, and there are no real community benefits for Black people east of truth when it comes to loaning money through your businesses, getting lines of credit through your business, or purchasing homes, right? So why is it a local issue? We put money, we pay taxes, and we pay a greater tax than the rich in Kansas City. You want to talk about development? There has been $8 billion, according to the Downtown Economic Development Council, in downtown and central Kansas City since 2007. Where have your Black general contractors emerged? Where have your Black professional service providers, architects, and engineers emerged? There is a cap by virtue of the NBE policy that limits what our net worth can be, and therefore regulates us to chasing 5 and 10% of a contract where we have to race to the bottom just to get a slice of the pie. At the end of the day, the last thing I want to mention is also responsible when you think about how it has enacted eminent domain. The prototype or the master project that you can look at is at 18th and Vine, and we wonder why it has not prospered. In 1994, the city enacted eminent domain when you had the Black 18th and Vine Merchants Association, and you had the last vestiges of Black-owned business owners down there that were keeping that area alive. And none of them had come back. None of them, including Papa Lou's, my family restaurant, none of them were ever able to regain full momentum after being taken out by eminent domain. So there has been irreparable harm, not just by private citizens, but by the city of Kansas City. It's systematic, and we're not talking about individual acts of racism or progress or prejudice.
Thank you so much for that. We have a hand in the back, and then we have a gentleman here in the middle. And one of the things I like to say, Brother Marvin, I just reminded me of this. We will soon be putting out a request for information to hire an organization, a company, an expert to help us do the deep dive work on digging into the background of these scenarios. There will be an opportunity for community members that we will pay to share those stories. And so as I listen to him talk, I don't know if you're a teacher or just a historian or a business person in the community, but a lot of those data points will be critical, because if you could give us the example, then we can dig into that example and find out, again, who did it, how did they do it, who was involved, and is there any city policy or procedure that were a part of that? So thank you so much for that. Yes, ma'am.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elmore Tullis Jefferson. I'm from Kingston, Kansas. And I'm very grateful and thankful to be here. And while yes, it is certainly a nice day, and I could probably find something to do, like pull up those weeds that had Mr. Hayday and that type of thing. This is in my heart. And so thank you to the commission and to the task force and so forth, and everyone's on stage. My interest in being here is to shout. My interest is to learn. Because we have not in Kansas City, Kansas yet, but I'm hoping that we have little tidbits, and there's some bait out there, and people are taking a bite at this and a little at it, to do what you have done. So whatever I can do, and if you're invited, I would certainly like to participate. To the young lady, my condolences, who lost her sister in 9/11. I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I happen to have a situation looking at the civil laws and so forth. And you're right, the compensation is based upon certain values, not on human value. So one person is ranked above someone else. So hopefully that will be a policy dive, a deep dive into that. That could possibly be a form that preserves reparations remedy. And then to the gentleman on stage in economic development, I was very pleased with what you said about economic development, not just equating to money, because this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing we have a plethora of land bank parcels and so forth as a result of so many things about which we know. That the rush to cure is talking about brick and mortar. But we're not hearing anything about human development or community development as it relates to public safety or health and that type of thing. So I'm particularly interested, and I know this is probably premature, I'm particularly interested in how the land that we have that is so easily labeled as blight can be labeled as really the asset that it is in order to get those remedies that we need. So thank you very much.
Ma'am, would you repeat your name again for me?
Thank you. It's Elmora Tullis Jefferson.
Tullis Jefferson. Thank you.
I'm Bob Roman, R-O-N-N, and I live here in Kansas City on Gillum, and I've been here 18 years now. And I came here in favor of reparations, and I wanted to know more about what was going on. And I'm very impressed with the panel and with the work that's been done so far. And I want to commend the group on stage and the group that stood up in the introduction. And I wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We, as I said, we are just getting started. We will do, or we will encourage faith communities, the business community, to join us, because at this point we are exploring, we are looking, we're doing the research, we're not even that recommendation. So it's hard for me to imagine anybody who would not be supportive of our work at this stage. We're taking a look at the Kansas City landscape and how did we get here? Who was involved, what happened, and what can we do so that it never happens again? Thank you so much for your support.
My name is Mark Fields. On Monday, I believe 2 years ago. In Kansas City all my life. Born, bred, raised. In '64, we had to go to schools that we didn't want to go to. We were told not to come. Almost went off. Before that, I grew up in the community. And it seemed like there were no problems. As I matured, got out there, East High School, I had white women come on the sidewalk and tell them to get off the sidewalk. I was a young kid, and guys ran by and threw bricks at me. And it never stopped. I was playing other things, manage, lady offices, I've done a lot of things. But she'll see it. You can only go so far. I think that the mayor, others have seen the necessity to do what you do. And my work is to keep on. Every meeting I go to, the ministers, don't get discouraged. Do what you do. Don't fall back. We'll be free.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If you have a question, well, is there anybody to talk about before I have Eric run down? Okay, we have two questions over here, and then this young lady on the front row.
You're Baker.
I'm sorry, last name?
Baker, B-A-K-E-R. And I just want to say that I am influenced by this commission, and I think that everyone felt compelled to come out because of the great work that you all are doing. My family goes back at least 4 generations on my maternal and paternal side inside of Kansas City. And in speaking to some of my older relatives, they've explained to me that there were streets that couldn't be crossed at certain points in time. And as Mr. Lincoln alluded to earlier, there's also covenants that are in different areas that have been restricted. I do commend the different areas of farms that you all are looking at, being that it's education, housing, those types of things, because a lot of times education, the dollars that are spent inside of the schools are based on the taxes that are collected. And in order to be able to fund those schools and make those schools equal, they have to have the revenue. If you have a school that is greatly, that has a high number of students versus a district that may have like a lower number of students but a higher amount of revenue, then you're going to be able to spend more on each student. So those are some of the gaps. But lastly, I'll say, I look at things through something that I would call a summation. And basically what that is I've heard with healthcare that people can live 3 to 4 blocks away from one another inside of Kansas City, but have life expectancy that's quite different. So with that being said, the summation is everything that we're talking about today. At the end of a person's lifespan, if you have people that can live 3 or 4 blocks away from one another, but that lifespan can be 10 to 15 years, how is that possible? It's when you sum everything up that happens to be the experience. And I'll also say I'm not part of a group. I don't represent anyone or anything like that, but I do represent my family. I represent myself because I've been a 47-year citizen here inside of Kansas City, with the exception of being in school down south at HBCU. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your comment. I think we have got 10 to 3. Are there any others that are on the front needs to make a comment? Are there any other comments? So this will be our last comment, and we'll give the subcommittee chair an opportunity to make final comments, and we'll welcome everybody back. Yes, ma'am. Your name, please.
Mary Dawkins.
Mary Dawkins.
I've never spoken to a microphone since. I have to say that I've been keeping track of you all on your Zoom meetings, your regular meetings, and I'm very impressed with the panel that's been put together. I'm very excited about the work you're doing and hopefully the outcomes that will come. This is a stupid statement, but I've always been on your side since as early as I can remember. Maybe this family I grew up in, I don't know. But I always have been. But I'm painfully aware of how much I have not known in the details my gut told me I was on your side, but I didn't know all the details. And I have been methodically, intelligently educating myself and finding out that the details are, and I tell my friends, the details are really even worse than most of us know. They are, and that is truthfully the case. I visited the Equal Justice Museum in Montgomery for 3 days this last spring, and visited many other sites, and my eyes are completely wide open. And we don't know what we don't know, but I came away 1,000%, no question for reparations. And I hope that anyone who has doubts about the folks, what they're doing, please listen to what they're saying and put aside your own opinion and look into it. They're telling the truth, and they deserve this.
Thank you so much. You know, one thing, I'm going to say this to Trevor and something, but I think what you just said is going to be key to our success, because when people think about reparations, they think about slavery. And they think about all the horrible things that happened in slavery. And what I will tell you as a 59-year-old black woman who's lived in Kansas City my entire life, I can tell you stories of how black people have been mistreated. We don't have to go back to slavery, although we understand that set the stage. But just because you're black, grocery stores, health outcomes, 85% of third grade children in Kansas City public schools right now are not reading on level. 85%. So as you, and the other thing I want to say is it's not just white people, black people need to be on this trip with us, because oftentimes we don't know some of the things that have happened or the extent to which those things have happened. So I'm going to leave the last few minutes for each subcommittee lead, and I'm going to put your share with the audience as well when we meet. The whole subcommittee, we meet the fourth Tuesday of every month from 3 to 5 at the city, or you can watch it on Zoom, and then each individual subcommittee has their own meeting where they are laser focused on their farm area. So if you're interested in healthcare or interested in criminal justice, public safety, you can tune into those specific conversations. This is our first listening session. We're doing it all. In the future, you will see listening sessions just focused on individual farm areas so that we can go even deeper. And with that, we'll start on
Okay, let's see if I can turn this.
Is that all? Let me say this. The statistics of how many whites, percentage of whites who support reparations or don't support reparations, should be taken seriously. Right? Now, put that in context. There's a very prominent white minister who's an elder in this community, even more elder than the king, who has retired. He used to have a program on KKFI called Review from East to Truth. Now, he's a white minister, and he tells this story. He came to Kansas City from Alabama. His father was a member of the Klan. He came to Kansas City, United Methodist minister, and pastored a church over on Warnell Road, not the black community and not the poor community. He started talking about social justice, and they ran him out of the church. He then came, he's from Truth, and then pastored a black church, and that must have been 50 years ago. He's retired. But on this program, the View from East to Truth, he used to get people who would call him, whites who would call and say, Reverend, what can I do? Whites would call in and say, what could I do? His response to them would be, racism is a white problem. Go talk to your people. If you are a white person, or let me put it this way so it's not skin tone, if you are not the descendants of an enslaved person in this country, I would challenge you to form an organization called Whites for Reparations. Have your meetings, bring in persons who are not supportive, and educate them about why they should support reparations.
That's great advice. I don't, you kind of put us on the spot with talking today. I had some data here recently from the Quality Schools Coalition. I was having a conversation with them earlier this week, and I'll just stick with my education lens. 99% of schools in Missouri are accredited. 30% of Missouri students are reading. 30% again, all Missouri students are not reading. 10% of Black students are not reading. 1/10 of Black parents are not reading. And that is a rate that is higher than any other race, right? And so, my organization, like I said, focuses on representation of Black male educators in schools. I heard the 2% law back there from Sean Rochester. Less than 2% of educators in America are Black men. It's actually down to 1.7%. Here in Missouri, it's even lower. And when you start to dig into the stories and the whys and the details, it really takes on full narratives that create these images and pictures that you have to take in. It's like a painting. You can't stare at one small piece of the painting. You have to back up and see the full image. And I think that's what I'll leave us with today. In each of these harm areas, there are data, and data can be misleading. There are anecdotes and stories. There are histories and narratives. And I would encourage, please do what Dr. Taki has suggested and see the full picture. Dig into all the details. Zoom out and understand the context to be fully informed around this issue. I also want to invite and welcome anyone that would like to chat more individually about education, about reparations in general. When will your subcommittee meetings be held?
Economic Subcommittee, the two members here that I was going to talk to them about, hopefully having a meeting the second Thursday, which would be coming this coming Thursday, maybe it's the third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m.
Yes.
The Health Committee and the Education Committee are having meetings Tuesday and Wednesday, and so we'll be getting all done by the end of Thursday, and it's all done at the beginning of the week.
I was going to say our website is live, so if you go to our website through the City of Kansas City to Reparations, all of the committees are listed, chairs are listed, the members of the committees are listed, as well as their meeting times, so that we all get on the website. So
yeah, I just want to end with open invitation to attend meetings, to have conversations, to have coffee, meet, because even this commission is just a small piece of the puzzle. All of us are involved in doing this work on a daily basis in some way that you can be a part of, that you can plug into, that you can be more informed of. So I just want to thank you again and open all doors of communication.
So thanks everybody. I want to be respectful of time, so I don't have a lot to add other than I'm really grateful for today and for the stories that were shared. I do agree with Dr. Taki that reparations is not just money. I think that also being able to tell our own stories are part of reparations, and I think what happened today was the start of that. So often we have not been in control of our own stories and how we're portraying, and even being able to tell the complete story. So I'm grateful for hearing about that today. The healthcare subcommittee meets on every second Tuesday over Zoom from 4 to 5 p.m. So please feel free to join those meetings.
I just wanted to commend everyone in here, especially the people who shared testimony and stories and information to me. It was very indicative of how I hope that our commission will be run, which is us being more simply like coordinators or liaisons between the community, because I think our community is where the wisdom is at and the knowledge that we need. So I'm just very deeply appreciative to have been able to learn from you all today. And I think the very last thing I wanted to add was that I believe at the height of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King had a 65% disapproval rating. And so I imagine someone like Malcolm X was much worse. And so I don't really take moral direction from the popularity of movements or ideologies. I think that we should be pressing for what we think is the right thing to do. And even if that isn't very unpopular. So I just wanted to leave with that. Thank you all again.
Thank you all for your time today. I want to thank all the folks for joining us. And we all the folks that joined us and told their stories. Todd Harris, Education, Dan Smith, Minnie Dean, again, advisor to the coalition. He is on the KC Coalition for Reparations. And we thank all of you, and we appreciate you caring about this topic, and we hope that you stay with us on and on for the next 18 months and help make sure we get this thing right. Thank you so much.